You are about to enter a world of dreamscapes and nightmares. A world where the surreal is real, and you will encounter things humanity was never meant to know. Prepare to have your fragile illusions of reality shattered as you cross over into the nightmare realm.
Santa Claus is coming to town. The chill Arctic wind whistles through the snow-covered mountains of the North Pole as the full moon shines down and reflects off of the snow, making it easier to see in the pitch darkness of the night. A familiar figure is seen riding a sleigh, being pulled by 8 reindeer. His red and white coat and hat give him warmth, and at times like these, you can understand exactly why he has such a long beard. Santa seems to be following a set of tracks in the snow, which are being quickly obscured by the harsh weather conditions. The tracks appear to be human, yet smaller, most likely belonging to one of his elves. Reluctantly, Santa signals the reindeer to stop with a tug on their reins as the tracks become too faint to follow any longer. Santa surveys the area, trying to get an indication of which way his wayward elf had wandered, when a scream echoes through the mountains. Santa gauges the general direction of the scream, disembarks from his sleigh, and heads towards it as swiftly as his legs can carry him.
Hello?
Santa calls out as he trudges in what he hopes is the right direction. No reply can be heard, but Santa sees something a short distance away. Unsure if it is his lost elf, he makes his way towards the unknown object. As he gets closer, he is able to make out more details and sees that it is indeed the missing elf. Santa reaches his destination and finds himself standing over the elf's badly mutilated body.
Oh my God. What in the world did this to you?
Santa mumbles, in shock at the grisly murder scene he has found himself at. There is not much time for confused pondering, as a bone-chilling howl interrupts Santa's thoughts, and a grim foreboding overtakes him. The howl sounds close, and most likely belongs to whatever was the cause of the carnage. Santa looks back in the direction from which he came, and tries to estimate the distance to his sleigh, but the snow and wind make it impossible to see that far. With his safety undeniably in jeopardy, he decides to try and make his way back to his sleigh and attempt to flee back to his workshop with extreme haste. Santa kneels down and picks up the elf's corpse.
Don't worry, little buddy. I'm not leaving you here. I'll get you back home. I promise.
Santa vows as he cradles his fallen comrade. The winds that hindered Santa earlier are now at his back, but that is little compensation for the heavy load he now carries as he retraces his steps. Santa's breathing is heavy and labored as he trudges towards the sleigh, which finally comes into view a short distance away. Santa breathes a sigh of relief at the mere sight of it.
We're almost there.
Santa whispers, apparently to the elf, but actually to ease his own nervousness. Santa makes it to the sleigh and places the elf in the back, a place that is usually occupied by his magical sack of presents on Christmas Eve. As he is about to get aboard the sleigh himself, he freezes as he hears a low, guttural growl coming from directly behind him. A feeling of dread washes over Santa as he slowly turns to face the beast that killed his friend. But he is unprepared for what his eyes behold. The creature standing before him was not quite a man, and not quite a beast, but a hybrid of the two. The creature resembled a white wolf, but stands erect on 2 lupine legs. Drool drips from its canine snout as it bares its teeth at Santa. Despite being a man whose daily life is filled with magic and wonder, finding himself in the presence of a werewolf is enough to freeze him in fear.
Dear God in heaven.
Santa mumbles to himself. The two stand facing each other for what feels like an eternity to Santa, who stands as still as he can, going so far as to breathe only in short, shallow breaths, fearing that any movement could cause the beast to attack. Without moving his head, he shifts his gaze to the sleigh in the hopes of finding something, anything, he could use to defend himself against the creature. He spies his walking stick in the front of his sleigh, which is made from oak and has a silver handle shaped like a Christmas ornament. Knowing that silver is the only thing that can kill a werewolf, Santa decides that going for the cane is his only chance to escape the same fate that befell the elf. With no other options, Santa quickly turns and reaches for the cane, and as he does, the werewolf lunges forward towards its prey. Santa grabs the cane, and as he is about to swing at the creature, he feels a sharp pain in his right shoulder as the beast's powerful jaws lock onto him. Santa screams in agony as he feels the creature's claws rake across his chest. Despite the blinding pain, Santa is able to make one desperate attempt to save himself as he plunges the cane into the creature's chest. The werewolf falls to the ground, and as it takes its final breath, transforms back into its human form. Santa leans against the sleigh as he is barely able to hold himself up. The pain and loss of blood are making him dizzy. He stumbles and falls into the sleigh, and as he feels consciousness slipping away, he manages to summon the strength to utter a single word.
Home.
Santa barely manages to command his reindeer before he passes out. The reindeer, whose loyalty kept them from bolting without their master when the werewolf attacked, now rush off as swiftly as they can to spirit him back to his workshop in the hopes that all is not lost and his life can be saved. As the sleigh nears the workshop, a few of the elves taking a break outside notice it approaching, and that something is wrong. The elves rush to meet the sleigh, which skids to a halt, and see Santa's injured and unconscious form in the front of it, and their mutilated comrade in the back.
Quickly, get Santa inside,
Commands one of the elves.
But what about...
Starts another elf.
There is nothing we can do for him. We have to help Santa. Someone, go and get Mrs. Claus.
The first elf interrupts. Most of the elves quickly grab their master and carry him inside, while one of them runs off to find Santa's wife. One month later, Christmas Eve. Santa Claus awakens startled and sits bolt upright, sweating and out of breath. He reaches for his shoulder that was wounded a month earlier when he was attacked. Mrs. Claus enters the room, having heard Santa's anguished cry. Her face is worn with worry.
You really should listen to me that tonight, you know.
Mrs. Claus states sternly.
I'm fine. Besides, I can't let all those children down. They are depending on me to brighten their Christmas mornings.
Santa replies as he tries to regain his composure.
I don't see why the elves can't take care of it. Just this once. Under the circumstances, I think it would be okay.
Argues Mrs. Claus.
There is no reason I can't deliver the toys myself. My wounds healed quickly. All that remains are a few scars.
Explains Santa reassuringly. Mrs. Claus shakes her head disapprovingly as Santa gets out of bed and begins to don his traditional Christmas attire.
But what about the nightmares? You've had them every night since you were attacked, and they've gotten much worse the last few days. Please, reconsider.
Mrs. Claus pleads. Santa finishes dressing and walks to his wife.
I can't shirk my duty because of a few bad dreams. I'll be fine. I promise.
Santa says and kisses his wife on her forehead. Santa makes his way to the door and opens it. Before he goes through it, he pauses. Santa turns back and flashes an energetic smile to his wife before leaving the room.
Stubborn old fool.
Mrs. Claus mumbles to herself as the door closes behind Santa. The elves snap to attention as Santa enters the workshop.
Today is the big day, boys. Let's get ready.
Santa declares as he goes to his desk and sits down. Santa takes out his list and begins checking it twice, making sure he knows exactly which children have been naughty and which have been nice. Elves scurry around the workshop, putting finishing touches on presents and placing them in Santa's seemingly bottomless sack. The hours fly by, as there is much work to be done and precious little time to accomplish it all. Once their tasks have been completed, the elves load the magical sack onto Santa's sleigh. A few of the elves open the double doors leading to the outside and push the sleigh out to a clearing where the reindeer had already been led. The reindeer are hitched to the sleigh and await their master as they bask in the warmth of the sun. Santa comes outside and approaches the reindeer with a bowl filled with grain that has magic dust mixed in with it. The reindeer pep up at his approach. Santa feeds each reindeer some of the magical feed, and their hooves begin to glow slightly. Santa boards the sleigh, and as he tugs on the reins, he issues a famous command.
Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen.
Santa shouts as the reindeer take off and pull the sleigh upwards and onwards towards the first stop on his long journey. The reindeer fly at incredible speeds, faster than the fastest jet.
Ho, ho, ho!
Santa bellows as the reindeer near the first city of many they are to visit that night. The sun begins to set, and the moon begins to rise as dusk falls over the city. Santa begins to feel odd as a wave of nausea washes over him. His head begins to pound, and his muscles feel like they are on fire. The reindeer begin to sense that something is amiss, and show their nervousness with a less than stable flight. Santa looks down at his hands, and discovers they are covered in white hair. He sees that his fingers have elongated, as have his fingernails, which have become sharp claws. Santa lets out an anguished scream, as the pain of his transformation becomes unbearable, which spooks the reindeer, causing them to fly erratically as panic overtakes them. The sleigh thrashes about, and Santa is unable to secure himself aboard and is thrown from the sleigh. Without a pilot to guide them, the frightened reindeer head back home to the North Pole. As Santa hurtles towards the ground, he takes some magic dust from his pocket and sprinkles it on himself in an attempt to slow his descent. He feels his face stretching into a more canine shape. Noticing a large snow mound at the back of a dead-end alley, Santa tries to aim his fall for it. Santa plunges into the snowbank, and for a few tense moments, there is no sign of whether or not he survived. But then, the snow mound shows signs of something moving within it. Something bursts out from the snow mound, but what emerges is no longer Santa, but a werewolf. The werewolf tilts back its head and howls at the full moon shining down through the clouds. A homeless man, sitting in the alley where Santa fell, questions his sanity when he sees a werewolf dressed like Santa Claus standing atop a snow mound. He rubs his eyes and takes a second look, but he sees exactly what he did at first glance. Unfortunately for him, the werewolf notices him as well, and begins to head in his direction. Frozen in fear, the man is unable to run.
Please. No. Please.
The vagrant begs as the creature reaches him. Unlike its human form, the werewolf has no concept of mercy or kindness, and growls angrily at the man, who promptly urinates in his pants. The homeless man winces as the creature swipes at him with its razor-sharp claws. The werewolf rips open its victim's stomach and drools hungrily as the homeless man's intestines spill out onto the street. The werewolf then lunges forward and clamps its powerful jaws onto the dying man's neck and tears out his throat. Its victim is unable to scream, but can only gurgle as the life leaves his body. The werewolf howls triumphantly before starting to head out of the alley and towards the crowded city streets in search of more prey. Having lost their master, the reindeer return to the North Pole. The senior elf is in the workshop, cleaning up from all the last-minute work. He hears the sleigh bells and knows that something is amiss, as the sleigh should not have returned for several more hours. As he makes his way outside, he sees Mrs. Claus also hurrying to meet the sleigh, and also looking very concerned.
I told him not to go,
Says Mrs. Claus, fraught with worry.
Nothing could have convinced him not to go. The children mean too much to him.
Replies the elf. The pair reach the sleigh and see that Santa is not aboard.
Oh my God. Where is he? Why would they come back without him? Something terrible must have happened.
Mrs. Claus rambles as she imagines the worst.
We don't know what happened, but we will find out,
States the elf as he climbs aboard the sleigh. Mrs. Claus quickly climbs in next to the elf and takes the reins. She signals the reindeer to depart, and they pull the sleigh into the air and off in the direction from whence they came.
Take us to Santa.
Mrs. Claus commands the reindeer sternly. The reindeer obey and head for the spot where Santa fell from the sleigh. Hoping to ease Mrs. Claus's tension, the elf tries to reassure her.
I'm sure he's all right.
The elf says as he tries to hide his own fear at what they'll find when they reach their destination. At the speeds the reindeer can achieve with the aid of magic dust, it takes mere moments for Mrs. Claus and her elven companion to complete their journey. Mrs. Claus braces herself and prepares for the worst, but nothing could have prepared her for what her eyes behold. Instead of the man she loves, she sees a monster in his place. Rather than inspiring Christmas cheer, the wolf in Santa instills fear in those that see him. People run, screaming through the streets, trying to escape the rampage of the terrible beast in their midst. The police arrive on the scene and open fire on the werewolf, but their standard bullets prove ineffective against the creature. The bullets have one effect. They anger the beast, who charges at the police officers, who scatter at its approach. The werewolf jumps atop one of the police cars and bays at the moon. Mrs. Claus and the elf land the sleigh on a low rooftop, unseen by the citizens, as the murderous werewolf has their undivided attention. Mrs. Claus cannot hold back tears as she stands at the edge of the roof and looks down at what her beloved has become. The elf is speechless as he stands next to her.
I knew something was wrong, but I never expected this.
Mrs. Claus says sadly.
Neither did I. I thought something just spooked the reindeer while Santa was inside a house, delivering presents.
The elf adds. While his loved ones look on from above, something catches the werewolf's eye. A young boy stands on the sidewalk, having been separated from his parents. The boy stands glued to the spot, too terrified to move, while everyone else has scurried away like rats running from a cat. The beast jumps down from the police car and stalks towards the boy, who seems like easy prey. Mrs. Claus is unresponsive, her mind unable or unwilling to accept what it sees. The elf knows that something must be done, and done quickly, or the boy's life will be lost.
We have to do something.
The elf declares desperately. Mrs. Claus does not answer, or even acknowledge her comrade in any way. Knowing that time is of the essence, the elf runs to the sleigh and reaches into the magic sack. From the enchanted bag, he pulls a revolver containing a single silver bullet and runs back to the edge of the roof. The werewolf reaches the boy, who has tears streaming down his face. The beast slowly raises a clawed hand and seems about to swipe at the boy. The elf sees this moment as the point of no return and aims the gun at his master. Before the creature can swipe, it pauses, almost as if some part of Santa was still inside and did not want to harm the child. The elf also pauses, hoping that this display of mercy is a sign that Santa is not beyond saving. The moment is short-lived, as the beast reasserts itself and starts to swing its claws at the boy. Mrs. Claus sees the child's life is about to be taken and knows that Santa would rather die than cause a child to come to harm. She grabs the gun from the elf and fires at her husband. The bullet finds its mark and strikes the werewolf in the heart. Mrs. Claus says nothing as she drops the gun and walks back to the sleigh. The elf follows her silently. and the duo departs. The police approach the fallen Santa with trepidation, unsure if the beast is truly vanquished. They watch as he takes his final breaths and retakes his human form.
What do we put in the report?
Asks a young officer, doubting if his own eyes can be trusted.
We say that a department store Santa got hopped up on PCP, went nuts, and started attacking people.
Answers the senior officer.
But
Begins the younger officer.
But nothing. That's going to be my version of the story, and unless you want to end up bounced off the force for being a nut job, I suggest it be yours too.
Interrupts the senior officer. Reports of the incident are in every major newspaper on Christmas morning, though no reputable reporter dared to print that a werewolf rampaged through the city on Christmas Eve. Instead, they all stuck with the official story given by the police department, though none of them even considered the possibility that the beast was the real Santa Claus. However, that year, Santa did not make his deliveries.
I hope you've enjoyed your journey into the Nightmare Realm. Congratulations. You've returned to the safety of the real world. Haven't you?